I'm the eldest prince of the empire, and an Omega. I was drugged at a party and ended up sleeping with someone. Then I lost my memory and fell into the hands of the Alliance. The powerful man I'd ripped off glared at me and pulled out a riding crop. What are you hiding? What little treasure are you clutching in there? Let me see. He looked down and saw my slightly rounded belly. His gaze froze, and he looked back up in disbelief. Do you have a tumor or something? I was on the second floor of the diplomatic ballroom in the Imperial Palace. Draped in a tailored black cape, I slowly pulled a velvet glove off with my teeth. As a crowd of officials escorted me toward the ballroom, one of them took advantage of a gap in the crowd to hand me a document. Your Highness, I need you to review this, if you please. I took the file from his hand. My eyes scanned it, taking in 10 lines at a time. A similarly well-dressed young man sauntered up behind me, casually falling into step at my side, a lazy smirk on his face. Hey, did you hear what I just said? What do you think? I ignored him. I fluently signed my name on the document in my hands. With slender, elegant fingers, I passed the file to the Minister of Finance beside me. Take this and run it through the proper government channels. The Minister of Finance bowed his head respectfully. Yes, Your Highness. The young man I'd ignored didn't seem offended, merely raising an eyebrow. Are you sure you don't want to engage in a little power struggle with me, dear brother? When I didn't answer, he leaned in and murmured in my ear. The Empire hasn't seen twins like us in ages. If we don't fight for the throne, politics around here will be so boring. I finally stopped walking and looked at the idiot beside me, my lips pressed into a thin line. Ryan, if you're that bored, go do a couple of pirouettes in the middle of Imperial Square. Go bond with the senior citizens. Just stop bothering me. Before he could react, I slapped the pen I was holding against his chest, turned on my heel, and strode into the ballroom. The captain of the guard was already waiting at the entrance. Your Highness, this way, please. I pushed the door open. Who did the Alliance send? The captain followed close behind me. Caleb Shaw, the Alliance's chief adjudicator. I pressed my fingers to my temple. Never heard of him. The captain bowed his head obediently. Mr. Shaw keeps a low profile and rarely makes public appearances. It's said that while he leads the pro-peace faction in the Alliance, his methods are extremely aggressive. He's a master strategist and, seeing my complete lack of interest, he paused, then added, also, rumor has it the Shaw family is incredibly wealthy. He made the Alliance's young billionaires list at a very young age. My eyes flickered with interest. Well, that makes things a little more interesting. But when I walked into the ballroom, I was informed by an Alliance official that their chief adjudicator was feeling unwell. The lead Alliance official wore an arrogant expression. My apologies, Your Highness. Our chief adjudicator is new to the Empire and the change in environment doesn't agree with him. I'm afraid he won't be able to join you today. You can discuss the purchase of the interstellar missiles directly with me. My expression remained neutral as I curved my lips into a slight smile. This Caleb Shaw was no pushover. He was already making a power play. The captain of the guard beside me looked like he was about to explode, but he was constrained by diplomatic protocols and could only follow my lead. I nonchalantly flicked a piece of lint off my cufflink. No ruse. The Empire will negotiate with the Alliance when your adjudicator is available. The Alliance official met my gaze, his expression unyielding. I will have to consult the adjudicator on that matter. Our gazes clashed, sparks flying in the air. I smirked. Be my guest. As I reached the door, I paused and glanced back. To the Alliance official still standing his ground, I left one final remark. The Empire needs a partner to maintain our monopoly on interstellar technology. Of course, that partner doesn't necessarily have to be the Alliance. On the second floor of the ballroom, I rested my hands casually on the railing of a balcony overlooking the grounds. I tilted my head back, gazing up at the endless sea of stars, a brilliant and boundless expanse. Lowering my gaze, I swirled the rich red wine in my glass. The captain of the guard approached from behind. He gave a slight bow. Your Highness, we've looked into it. Mr. Shaw is suffering from a minor ailment, nothing serious. Their attending physician exaggerated the situation to try and embarrass the empire. Just as I expected. I looked down. I see. You're dismissed. After he left, my gaze drifted from the second-floor balcony down to a man on the ground below. He was tall and lean, speaking casually into his comms earpiece. I understand. I'll definitely prioritize the Alliance's interests. You're not worried about that? Then what are you worried about? The man paused for a moment. Pretty? How pretty could he be? You know my type has always been a classic Omega with dark eyes and short hair. Who would like pine green eyes? Sounds weird. The night was calm. My elbow rested on the railing, the silvery light reflecting in my pine green irises. A mocking smile touched my lips. I tilted my hand, pouring the half-full glass of red wine over the edge. Without a second glance, I turned and walked away. The man below didn't seem to notice. Instead of worrying about me falling for some Imperial Omega, he said lazily, "You should be more worried about my drop-dead gorgeous Omega wife magically falling from the sky one day." What the? Who just poured wine on me? I had just left the balcony and hadn't even reached the elevator when my legs suddenly gave out, and I nearly collapsed to my knees. The strange feeling in my body told me what had happened. That glass of wine, it had been spiked. But it was too late. The flush of an Omega's heat swept through me. I stumbled into the nearest room. The lights were off, and the room was dark. I assumed it was empty. Then I heard the sound of running water, and the silhouette of a tall, powerful alpha male appeared on the shower curtain. For an alpha, the scent of a prime Omega in heat is like a potent, irresistible drug. I wanted to turn and leave, but before I could take more than a few steps, I collided with the man emerging from the bathroom. I fell into a warm, solid chest. An overpowering alpha scent washed over me, unrestrained. My fingers pressed against his firm abs. All I knew was that when the alpha in front of me looked down, his eyes were incredibly dark. He rested a hand on my waist, his voice husky. "You Imperials are really something. When force doesn't work, you switch to seduction. You'd really stoop to a cheap trick like sending an Omega in heat to throw himself at me?" The room was dimly lit, and the fever of my heat clouded my mind. I tried to force my heavy eyelids open to see, but everything was a blur. I could only hear the man in front of me speak. "What are you looking at me for? I only answer to the Alliance and its people." "You?" The Alpha's words trailed off. His gaze landed on my damp, pine green eyes. As I was about to slide to the floor, he reached out and steadied me. "Your eyes, they're as beautiful as emeralds." The Alpha's teasing tone grew cold. His voice deepened, and his long, elegant fingers threaded through my dark hair. "The Empire really spares no expense, does it? Daring to use a royal treasure like you as bait." I tried to grab onto something. "It hurts." The Alpha didn't give me the support I was looking for. Instead, he buried my head in his chest, pinning me to the wall with one hand around my waist. He wouldn't let me move. All I could do was stare at him with reddened, pleading eyes. "You're a very cute Omega, I'll give you that. But we have rules in the Alliance. Diplomatic officials are forbidden from private contact, close association, or any under-the-table dealings with Imperial royalty." The Alpha raised his other hand as if to press the button for room service. I panted, tilting my head up, trying to reach his cool lips. His pupils contracted, his eyes darkening as he watched me. But I wasn't tall enough. My lips only managed to brush against his collarbone. "Fuck," the tall Alpha finally swore. He lifted me into his arms, his lips hovering over my scent gland. "You don't even know how to seduce someone. Didn't anyone teach you?" He curled his fingers around mine, guiding my hand to unbutton his shirt. He breathed slowly against my ear. "This is how you seduce someone, understand? Go back and tell your prince that I'm keeping this treasure." My back met the soft mattress of the bed. The Alpha held my waist, kissing away the tears welling in my eyes. "You want me to mark you?" My voice was hoarse. I couldn't speak. I could only hear the Alpha's low chuckle. "If you don't want this, recite the third article on page 263 of your Imperial Code. If you can't recite it right now, I'll take that as a yes." Page 263, Article 3. Completely oblivious to his tyrannical terms, I tried to think, my mind a chaotic mess. Maybe the sight of me concentrating so hard amused him, because he pressed down on me again. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my fingers curling unconsciously. Imperial Code, page 263, Article 3, concerns the Articles of Succession. Adult Omega royalty and alphas have equal rights to inheritance. Hearing my words, the alpha paused. I curled my fingers into his palm, desperate, urging him on. Mark me. The alpha's voice was a lazy drawl as he leaned down and bit into my scent gland. You want it so badly, but you still have to put on an act. You're much better when you're quiet, sweetheart. The eldest prince had not returned all night. The inner palace was in chaos. Where was His Highness last seen? The Alliance delegation's quarters. Have you checked there? Then what are you waiting for? Go. A young aide rushed out, running headfirst into me. When he saw my face, he scrambled to his knees. Your Highness. My expression wasn't pleasant. Get up. Seeing that I was back, the aide rushed to my side, full of concern. Your Highness, you were missing all night. Are you feeling unwell? I bit my lip to suppress a wince. I just stepped out for a bit, I said softly. It's nothing. I didn't know if it was because of last night's intensity or because that strange alpha was just that vicious, but my legs were still trembling slightly. The stimulating scent of alpha pheromones lingering on my tender scent gland was a constant reminder of what had happened. I lowered my eyes, silently digging my nails into my palm. Just let me find out who did this. I'll tear him limb from limb and feed him to the wolves in the desert. Meanwhile, a certain smug alpha returned to his room, carrying a delicate breakfast meant for an Omega. He stared at the empty room, lost in thought. Where did my drop-dead gorgeous Omega wife go? I entered the private chamber off the main diplomatic hall. Caleb Shaw and the Alliance delegation were already waiting. A screen had been placed in front of my seat, concealing me from view. Apparently, this was a special request from the Alliance government to prevent the temptation of imperial beauty. I didn't object. I had no interest in seeing anyone from the Alliance anyway. A smooth, slightly hoarse voice came from the other side of the screen. Your Highness, I apologize for yesterday's delay. I was not feeling well. The Alliance has come a long way with the sincere intention of purchasing the interstellar missiles. To speed things up, please give us your price and the Alliance will. Through the shadows of the screen, I rested my tired forehead on my hand. In a voice just as hoarse, I cut him off. Launchers and missiles, 200 million. Hearing my price, Caleb sputtered, spitting out a mouthful of cold tea. Leo, 200 million? Are you fucking kidding me? That's highway robbery. He was right. I was robbing him, but I was in a particularly bad mood today and felt like robbing him for a little extra. I crossed my long legs. Caleb, if you want to buy interstellar missiles, show some sincerity. After all, the Empire is the only one with this kind of large-scale destructive weaponry. And you're not our only potential partner. I could always sell them to the Nocturne Syndicate. I'm sure their leader would be more than happy to talk. Nocturne was a new organization that had risen in recent years, belonging to neither the Empire nor the Alliance. They were known throughout the galaxy for their power and wealth, and they could certainly afford the price. The hall wasn't large. I could hear his aide whispering in his ear. The Empire has indeed been in contact with Nocturne recently, and they seem to be interested in the missiles. Caleb gave a cold smirk. In contact with Nocturne, Leo, do you really think the Alliance can't outbid Nocturne? I lowered my gaze, a smile not quite reaching my eyes. I toyed with a chip on the negotiating table. Of course, I have always had faith in the Alliance, and in Mr. Shaw's financial resources. For the sake of a harmonious relationship between the Empire and the Alliance, I've already given you a friendly discount compared to what I'd offer Nocturne. Just as Caleb was about to say something, his aide grabbed his arm. Calm down, adjudicator. The Alliance only gave you a budget of 50 million. Anything over that comes out of your own pocket. You don't have that kind of money. You're just a trust fund kid. You can't afford to cover the difference yourself. Caleb suddenly calmed down, his face dark. Leo, do you really have to fleece me like this? I propped my head on my hand, intrigued. Don't put it so harshly, Mr. Shaw. 200 million in exchange for a century of the Alliance's unshakable position in the galaxy. With the Empire's backing, I'd say it's worth it. Seeing Caleb's eyes narrow in thought, I didn't press him further. I stood up. By the way, Nocturne's latest offer was 230 million. I trust Mr. Shaw's new offer won't disappoint me either. Will it? I turned and left, leaving Caleb to consider his options. Ever since the interstellar missiles appeared on the galactic stage, countless factions had vied for them. No matter how strong the Empire was, we could only control our own territory. To monopolize the missiles, we had to partner with another power. The Empire would never allow a third power to rise outside of the Alliance. And the Alliance knew the Empire's bottom line. But I hadn't expected Caleb Shaw to be even richer than I'd imagined. The final price we agreed on was not low. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, calmly watching the cargo transfer below. My gaze unconsciously fell on Caleb Shaw. This was the first time I had really studied the man sitting across the negotiating table from me. Caleb himself seemed like a laid-back alpha, yet he had a fox-like cunning that made him impossible to read. I couldn't say I liked him, but I couldn't say I disliked him either. I just had a feeling that ripping him off a few more times would be a lot of fun. Your Highness, my line of sight was interrupted. I turned to face the royal physician who had come to check my pulse. What is it? The physician sensed the faint displeasure in my tone. It's the second prince. He mentioned that since you came of age, you've shown signs of being somewhat frigid, which is not conducive to, his head lowered even further, not conducive to the production of an heir for the Empire, so he asked me to prescribe you some medication. Ryan again. My gaze didn't waver, returning to Caleb Shaw below. And what if an Omega is a little cold? Is the Omega the one on top when it comes to making an heir? The physician was stunned into silence, unable to argue. He could only retreat in defeat. As night fell, my aide advised me to rest. I set aside the signed documents and refilled my pen with fresh ink. Norus. Someone will be here to see me soon. Sure enough, a gloomy-looking Caleb Shaw soon appeared. Your Highness, it seems you've failed to deliver something. I feigned realization. You mean the receiver? Caleb, I placed the pen back in its holder. The receiver for the interstellar missiles, I said coolly, is priced separately. Very few people had access to a top-secret weapon like the interstellar missile. Naturally, even fewer would know that it required a receiver. As expected, Caleb could no longer contain his anger. He threw back the curtain, stormed in, and forcefully spun my chair to face him. Leo, do you really take me for a sucker? When he saw my face, his furious eyes widened in a flash of disbelief. You? I crossed my long legs, tilting my head back to meet Caleb's gaze. His eyes were deep, cold, and fox-like, as beautiful as stars. But the moment he saw me, his expression turned strange. His tone softened involuntarily. How much? For your family's receiver? I didn't know why Caleb's attitude had changed so suddenly, but on the principle of ripping him off to the very end, I pushed the calculator on my desk toward him. I'll give you a 20% discount. 50 million. Caleb repeated the number, his voice strained. 50 million. Leo, are you a pirate? He ground his teeth, looking like he was about to faint. His aide, who had followed him into the room, quickly whispered in his ear. Adjudicator, stay calm. The Alliance only gave you a $50 million budget. You already covered the launchers and missiles out of pocket. You're deep in debt. There's nothing left in the bank. Caleb's fingers dug into the arm of my chair. He spoke through clenched teeth. I know. He looked back at me. Your Highness, thanks to you, I'm about to be blacklisted by the Alliance Central Bank. Hearing this, I couldn't help but frown. Had I pushed him too hard? Caleb's posture was far from friendly. The air crackled with the oppressive pressure of a top-tier alpha's pheromones. My captain of the guard watched him warily, ready to protect me at a moment's notice. I just tilted my head back, looking up at him with misty eyes. What's wrong? Can't you handle it? Caleb, I can. TSK. That sounded like a molar cracking. The leader of the Nocturne Syndicate sat across from me, sipping tea and resting his head on his hand. We had barely exchanged a few words when someone came to report to me. Your Highness, one of the receivers has been stolen. My eyes darkened. A diversion. Kale, what is the meaning of this? Kale leaned back, his arms draped over the sides of the sofa, completely unfazed. The simple business, cousin. Caleb Shaw made a better offer. We're merchants, we follow the profit. Nothing wrong with that. The economy's been in a slump, and Nocturne has been losing money for years. We needed the funds. I was originally just going to take his money, but he said it was for a bridal price. After that, I couldn't refuse. But speaking of which, what on earth did you do to that Alliance adjudicator? He knew I was helping you drive up the price, yet he was still willing to let you fleece him. I picked up my teacup and took a small sip. Probably just another alpha led by his dick, I thought. Having lost my appetite for tea, I uncrossed my legs and stood up. Next time you don't have to make being partners in crime sound so noble. My dear. However many times removed, cousin. In the Empire's command center, I tapped my finger rhythmically on the tabletop, serenely watching a certain aircraft on the Empire's airspace map as it scrambled desperately under a hail of gunfire. The captain of the guard approached my side. Your Highness, Mr. Caleb Shaw of the Alliance is requesting a secure channel. I nodded slightly, signaling him to connect the call. A moment later, a silver screen materialized in mid-air. Caleb's fox-like eyes appeared on it. He looked relaxed, a silver chain around his neck. Your Highness's farewell ceremony is certainly enthusiastic. I met his gaze from my elevated position. The Empire can be even more enthusiastic. Adjudicator. Care to find out? Though his ship was in a tight spot, Caleb remained perfectly composed, his eyes as calm as stars. It would be my honor, Your Highness. The people behind him, however, were not so calm. It's a cannon. Activate level 1 defensive shields now. Caleb stood tall, issuing commands right in front of me without a hint of concealment. Aid, drop all defenses. Full speed ahead. Hearing this command, the Alliance officials cried out. Adjudicator, dropping all defenses in Imperial airspace was suicide. One hit from a mortar shell and they would be vaporized. A cold smile touched my lips. What, you think I don't have the guts to kill you? Caleb's posture was relaxed, a smile playing on his lips. You may not know this about me, Your Highness. I'm a gambler. The bigger the risk, the more I want to play. He then made a very strange gesture, pressing his fingers to the back of his own neck. My pupils reflected his movement. The bite mark on my own scent gland was in that exact spot. The people from the Empire and the Alliance had no idea what Caleb was doing, but I knew exactly what he meant. My expression turned to ice. Caleb was arrogantly telling me that he was the one I had bonded with that night. In the brief moment our eyes met, Caleb's ship had already flown out of the Empire's firing range at incredible speed. On the lingering communication screen, I watched with cold eyes as Caleb knelt on one knee, calmly taking my own virtual hand, the one resting on the missile launch console, and pressing a light kiss to my long fingers. It was a perfect rendition of a formal hand kiss, standard among the Alliance's upper class. Your Highness, the next time we meet, I'll be coming to marry you. The young aides around me all bowed their heads, holding their breath, not daring to watch. My voice was low as my fingers tapped softly on the tabletop. Scramble all bombers. Blast a path straight to him. One of the aides looked up in shock. Huh? For real? But that's the Alliance's. Seeing me look down in silence, the captain of the guard barked in a low voice. Blast what? His Highness means we can't lose face. Just fire off a few rounds behind his exhaust trail like a celebratory salute. The captain's voice wasn't quiet. Everyone in the room heard him, including me. I gave him a cool, unreadable glance, said nothing, and left. While the Empire had a hereditary monarchy, bloodline was never enough. Young royals were expected to lead troops and earn military honors. But because my pine-green eyes were always so conspicuous, I was frequently injured. To avoid being targeted, an aide handed me a pill. Your Highness, this pill was developed by the High Pontiff. Can temporarily change your eye color. I took the pill and swallowed it with some water. But during one raid, I was careless. As I turned over a body, I saw the explosives strapped to it. I froze. Your Highness, let go, an aide screamed. The captain of the guard reacted instantly, tackling me to the ground. With a deafening roar, a sea of fire consumed everything. In the endless darkness, my memories shattered into fragments. Like an empty dream, they were gone, and I could no longer find them. When I opened my eyes again, my hands were tied behind my back, and I was being herded along with a crowd of people. I covertly observed my surroundings. From the conversations around me, I gathered that this was a small group of Omega traffickers who roamed the galaxy. Their leader, codenamed Wolf, was the boss. A grunt saw I was awake and came over to take my details. A Prime Omega, huh? What's your name? I had no strength, my voice was raspy. I don't remember, I have amnesia. The grunt's pen paused. He looked surprised. Amnesia? For real? After the grunt reported to the wolf, the leader took a drag from his cigarette. Who cares if it's real or not? Inject him with the serum. Following his orders, the grunt skillfully grabbed my arm. I tried to struggle, but I was completely powerless. I could only watch as the needle slid into my arm. A few moments later, I began to vomit violently. Seeing that I couldn't walk, the grunt called the wolf over. He looked up impatiently. What is it now? Cold sweat broke out on my skin, and a dull ache started in my lower abdomen. I bit my lip. It hurts, I whispered. At that moment, I had no idea that my strong Omega pheromones were beginning to leak out. But the wolf was a normal alpha, and he quickly sensed it. You're in heat? No, wait. You're a pregnant Omega? Pregnant? The idea was completely beyond my comprehension. My mind raced, but everything was a jumble. Who was I? Why did I have amnesia? Why was I here? Pregnant? And whose child was I carrying? The wolf, however, was not pleased. If he's pregnant, he'll be hard to travel with. The grunt, however, had a cheerful idea. Even if he's pregnant, he's a top-quality Omega, a rare find. Besides, boss, if you don't say anything and we just hide his belly, who's gonna know? And if the baby is born on the road, there's a 50% chance it'll be a Prime Omega cub. That's another big payday. The wolf seemed tempted. Since he's pregnant, give him a nutrient shot. The grunt expertly selected a syringe and injected it into my arm. Though I felt awful, I could tell from their conversation that this was supposed to be good for the baby in my belly. So I just frowned and didn't resist. But soon after, I felt sick again, even worse than before. The grunt gave me a quick medical check and said something to the wolf. The leader suddenly roared. What the hell? Allergic to a nutrient shot? Having likely never heard of such a rare combination in his life, the wolf fell into a thoughtful silence, then shot up from the rock he was sitting on. Damn it! Where did this delicate Omega come from? Allergic to a nutrient shot? Did he grow up eating gold? Luckily, the grunt was quick to stop him, grabbing him around the waist. Boss, why are you getting worked up over a pregnant Omega? It's beneath you. The wolf spat on the ground viciously. Too high maintenance. I'm done. We'll sacrifice him here. Sacrifice was slang among Omega traffickers. It meant abandoning any Omegas who got sick or became too difficult to manage during transit. They called it setting them free, but in reality, an Omega with no ability to protect themselves, abandoned in the vastness of space, had only two fates: death or being found and forcibly marked by an alpha. The wolf took a reluctant drag from his cigarette. After all, this was a Prime Omega. But if even a nutrient shot, a luxury that cost them $100 a pop, couldn't keep him healthy, there was no point. If they couldn't make a profit, it was better to leave me to fend for myself. They blindfolded me and tossed me aside. Just as they were about to leave, a ship descended from the sky. It executed a beautiful drift across the planet's surface, kicking up a cloud of dust. The wolf, who got a face full of sand, started cursing. Shit, who the hell is that show-off? The first person to step off the ship was wearing sunglasses. He clicked the safety off his gun. Without a second glance, he single-handedly shot the wolf through the left leg. Trafficking omegas is a violation of interstellar law. You are under arrest. With his other hand, he projected his credentials into the air. This case will be handled by the Alliance's chief adjudicator, Caleb Shaw. A group of soldiers swarmed out of the ship behind him, surrounding the traffickers with their weapons. Once everyone was subdued, Caleb raised a hand and took off his sunglasses. He revealed a pair of fox-like eyes that glittered in the sun. His aide, however, who followed him out, was not nearly as cool. The moment he disembarked, he expertly crawled under the ship to inspect the damage, then whispered frantically in Caleb's ear. "Adjudicator, sir, you came in too hot. You shattered the exhaust pipe." Caleb tossed the sunglasses he'd been playing with to him. "It's just an exhaust pipe," he said dismissively. The aide gave him a friendly reminder. "Sir, have you forgotten? To pay for the interstellar missiles, you mortgaged this imported exhaust pipe to the Alliance Central Bank. On top of that, you still owe $5 million, which is currently on your father's tab. If you don't want to be blacklisted, I suggest you try to repair your $500,000 exhaust pipe as soon as possible." Caleb ignored him and walked over to the captured omegas. His gaze fell on me, and his eyes suddenly widened. "You?" Realizing what he was seeing, Caleb let out an amused laugh. "You look a lot like an old acquaintance of mine. A cute little hedgehog. Seeing you gives me a special kind of feeling." I looked warily at this man who seemed so full of himself. Love at first sight? Caleb thought for a moment, then shook his head decisively. "No, it's the feeling of my wallet screaming in pain." Oh, what a weirdo. It seemed his old acquaintance had left him with some serious trauma. Seeing that I was just staring at him blankly, Caleb patted my head. "Don't worry, I'm not petty enough to take it out on a look-alike. Go over there and register. Someone will send you home." He casually called his aide over to handle my registration. My voice was suddenly filled with disappointment. "I don't have a home." A wary look immediately appeared in Caleb's eyes. "Even if you don't have a home, I can't take you in. My Omega would get jealous. How about this? I'll send you to the Alliance. They'll protect you." Just as Caleb was about to turn and leave, my vision suddenly blurred. My fingers curled in pain. I don't know why, but my eyes, they hurt so much. The sharp-eyed aide was the first to notice something was wrong. "Wait, adjudicator." His eyes, they're changing color. Before the aide could finish, my world went dark. Caleb's coat was thrown over me, covering my face. The ropes binding me fell to the ground. Someone scooped me up, and a warm chest pressed against my back. Caleb carried me into his home. I tried to resist at some point, but the pheromones wafting from his coat were just too comforting. Even my morning sickness seemed to subside. When the coat was finally lifted, I opened my eyes. I was in a lavishly decorated villa, but the main floor was a vast, empty space with only a simple double bed in the middle. For some reason, I felt like this wasn't right. The words escaped me before I could stop them. "You're so poor." Hearing this, Caleb choked on his words. Then he almost laughed out loud from sheer frustration. "Poor, am I? Of course I'm poor. I left all my money in your empire. One trip to your empire cost me my entire life savings." I tried my best to understand what he was talking about, but with no memory of it, I failed. Caleb was still rattling off a list of his expenses when he looked down at me. His voice trailed off. He reached out and pinched my cheek. "Trying to act cute won't work now, you understand? You scammed me out of $5 million. You're gonna stay here and work it off like a dog." I didn't know what he was talking about. I just watched him silently. This person, while handsome, didn't seem like a good person at all. And he wanted me to pay him back. I didn't even remember what happened. What if he was the one scamming me? Caleb noticed I had been using his coat to cover my belly the entire time, as if protecting something precious. He grew a little jealous. "TSK, what little treasure are you clutching in there? Let me see." Because of the pregnancy, my first instinct was to protect my stomach. But he forcefully pried my hands away. "What are you hiding? Are you hurt? Let me see." Caleb's words died in his throat, his stunned gaze fixed on my stomach. Is this My still warm belly was already slightly swollen. Caleb raised his large hand and tentatively pressed down on my abdomen. Then he looked up in disbelief. For real? My big treasure is carrying a little treasure. And delivered right to my door? Can life get any better? Before I could say anything, there was a knock on the door. Adjudicator, sir. Taking advantage of Caleb's distraction, I quickly pulled away from him. Caleb looked up, annoyed. What is it? The aide who came in bowed his head. Sir, the ship is ready. Shall we send this gentleman back to the Empire? I looked at Caleb in surprise. Really? Was he going to send me home? Caleb seemed to have a sudden change of heart. Back where? He hasn't paid off his debt. This business between us isn't over. He's staying here to pay me back. Okay, I was getting ahead of myself. He was just a bona fide jerk. Seeing me look down with my long lashes, Caleb got even cockier. Remember, I'm not just your alpha. I'm your creditor. Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're pregnant. You're the one with a throne to inherit, not me. You're lying to me, I said softly. Caleb's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly composed himself and looked at me with amusement. I'm lying to you? What did I lie about? I looked up at him coldly. If I were really your Omega, your aide would have called me Madam, not Sir. Caleb glanced at his aide, who immediately understood. Madam. Even though the aide called me that, something still felt off. I was still trying to figure out the relationship between Caleb and me when he spoke up. Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you. Halfway through his sentence, Caleb suddenly turned to a doctor who had entered the room. Wait, he really doesn't remember anything? The doctor bowed his head. Theoretically, yes, that is the case. Caleb suddenly looked like he'd thought of something funny, and a smile touched his lips. And so, for the next half hour, I heard a different version of the story from his lips. I was his beautiful Omega wife who had run away from him after cheating with someone else, leaving him with a mountain of gambling debt. After finishing his story, Caleb even pulled out a riding crop with a fierce look. You're going to be my dog and pay back the hundreds of millions you owe me. I just stared at him, my eyes growing redder and redder. Caleb was startled by my reaction. What's wrong? Don't cry. I was lying, okay? My God. Please don't cry. Seeing that I was really about to burst into tears, he yelled for help. Doctor. Doctor. The doctor came to my side but found me curled up in a ball, hugging my knees, not letting anyone touch me. After trying and failing, the doctor could only talk to Caleb. Adjudicator, your husband is having a stress reaction. Now is not a good time for a prenatal checkup. Generally, pregnant Omegas have a strong dependency on their alphas. Why don't you try releasing some of your pheromones to calm him down? Caleb leaned down, releasing a small amount of his scent. His beautiful fingers tried to pry my hands away from where I was protecting myself again. Come on, let me feel the baby. I looked up at him. Then I leaned down and bit his hand. Hard. Ah! Though it hurt, Caleb kept his hand on my belly. He gritted his teeth, not daring to pull away too quickly for fear of hurting the little one inside. After I let go, Caleb stared at the bite mark on his hand in disbelief. Are you a professional biter or something? The mark was already bleeding. He turned to the guilty-looking doctor. You call this dependency? The air in the examination room was thick with an explosive amount of alpha pheromones. The doctor came out, covering his nose. Adjudicator, your husband and the baby are both healthy. You can rest assured. Outside, Caleb was looking over the prenatal report while I sat in the room, silently thinking. Did I really owe Caleb money? The way he gritted his teeth when he looked at me couldn't be faked. Caleb saved me, so he must be a good person. I counted on my fingers, but I really owed him a lot of money. I'd probably never be able to pay it back in this lifetime. I never would have thought I could lose so much money gambling. I counted on my fingers again, calculating slowly. If I did laundry and cooked for Caleb, that's maybe $200 a day. If I took care of the garden too, maybe another $50. My gaze fell to my belly. I wonder if this baby could fetch $200,000 when it's born. Or maybe I could negotiate with Caleb and have it count for $500,000. I'll never pay it off. I bit my finger, feeling more and more miserable. When Caleb came in, he found me with red-rimmed eyes. I figured it out, I told him. Caleb's joyful expression faltered. He looked at me, confused. Figured what out? I looked down, speaking very seriously. I shouldn't have gambled. I must have started stealing because I ran out of money from gambling. Caleb looked at me like I was an idiot. Then he pulled me into an incredibly gentle embrace. Don't think about it anymore, sweetheart. If you keep thinking like this, I'm worried it's going to affect our baby's IQ. Caleb set up a room for me to live in. It had everything I could possibly need, but he seemed to have forgotten one thing, to feed me. In the middle of the night, I was so hungry I couldn't stand it. I went to his room and shook him. Caleb rolled over and pulled me into the blankets, mumbling, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I bit my lip.
I'm hungry.
Caleb was instantly awake. You haven't eaten yet? When I nodded miserably, Caleb shot up and grabbed his phone. Yes, I need 3 chefs. A single meal prepared to the highest standard, just like last time. What do you mean? To feed an elephant? It's for my sweetheart. No, I don't have an elephant. My sweetheart is not an elephant. Just hurry up. We'll feed the leftovers to the elephant. What do you mean I don't have an elephant? I can't start raising one now? After he hung up, there was a knock at the door. After getting permission, the aide entered. Adjudicator, investigators from the enforcement division are here. They require your personal attention. Caleb put down his phone and tucked me into the blankets first. Wait here for your food. Okay? If you need anything, find my aide. Don't run off. I nodded. Only then did Caleb leave reassured. In the outer room, 2 investigators presented their credentials. Mr. Shaw, we've received a report that you are illegally detaining an Omega. Please cooperate with our investigation. Though it was an investigation, it was clear they were dispensing with the formalities. The 2 investigators immediately sat down with their notepads. Caleb, used to political rivalries, sat down casually to the side. One sharp-eyed investigator noticed the bite mark on Caleb's hand. Adjudicator, may I ask if this bite mark was left by an Omega? Caleb rubbed his forehead. Yes, but... The investigator nodded and said to his colleague, write this down. Information about the adjudicator privately keeping an Omega is confirmed. Seeing him spouting nonsense, Caleb retorted, he is my Omega. The investigator flipped through his notes. But adjudicator, you are not married. We can assume that this is a case of malicious assault under the guise of a fraudulent marriage proposal. Caleb was speechless for a moment. You can play your political games, but don't be ridiculous. The investigator cut him off sharply. Adjudicator, please mind your words. We investigators serve all the people of the Alliance, which naturally includes speaking up for the more vulnerable Omega population. Then he turned to his colleague. Write this down. The adjudicator abuses Omegas. The wound on his hand is a mark of the Omega's brave resistance against the adjudicator's tyranny. Caleb rubbed his forehead in frustration. He's pregnant. He's having a stress reaction. Understandable. The investigator pushed up his glasses and turned to his colleague. What are you waiting for? Write it down. The adjudicator admitted to abusing a pregnant Omega. Caleb, the investigators then called in the aide and the doctor for corroboration. The aide glanced at Caleb. The Omega was indeed brought back by the adjudicator and taken to his room. But he's from the imp. The investigator cut him off. An Omega is an Omega and deserves protection. The doctor, who had been woken up in the middle of the night and was still confused, scratched his head. I heard they have some kind of debtor-creditor relationship. The Omega apparently owes the adjudicator money, and then the adjudicator pulled out a riding crop and told him to pay it back. It was so sad. It made the poor Omega cry. Caleb, after the investigation, the investigators were furious. Adjudicator, please allow me to address you as such one last time. The chief adjudicator is the guardian of justice in the Alliance and should be a voice for the vulnerable. I never thought you would sink to bullying a defenseless Omega. You are unworthy. I poked my head out from the living room. Caleb, I said softly. I saw the investigator in the living room on the verge of tears, while Caleb beside him looked utterly defeated. Oh, look, there he is. The poor Omega, the poor child. Ah, you. The investigator stared at my pine green eyes in disbelief. Shaw, what the hell did you bring back from the Empire? Caleb finally reacted, quickly covering my eyes and pushing me back toward the room. As he left, he shot a bone-chilling glare at his aide, who knew exactly what to do. The aide promptly shoved the two investigators out. Someone would teach them what they should and shouldn't say. Caleb loomed over me, casting me in his shadow. What's wrong? Has the food not arrived yet? I spoke hesitantly. Actually, I've been wondering something. Even though I might have owed you money, I held up the ridiculously over-the-top platter of food in my arms. It was filled with every kind of delicacy imaginable, with even the side dishes being expensive, exquisite pastries. A big question mark appeared over my head. Are you stuffing me like a Thanksgiving turkey? Caleb had just managed to get me settled when I decided I didn't want to leave. Caleb's voice was hoarse as he warned me. It's my rut, sweetheart. I bit my lip, looking at him accusingly. But your pheromones, they're not enough. Can't you handle it, husband? The pheromones in the air suddenly exploded. The scent was so thick you could almost see it. Caleb's fingers were tangled in my hair as he pressed me down beneath him, panting. I've been holding back from devouring you whole. Are you trying to burn me alive? Sated with enough pheromones, a wave of sleepiness washed over me. I had no energy left. I was pliant and let him do as he pleased. Caleb wasn't one to turn down a gift. He leaned down. I fed you. Now it's your turn to feed me. Feed me, sweetheart. Although Caleb dealt with the two investigators, word still got out. A rumor spread that a high-ranking Alliance official was keeping an Omega captive, causing Omegas across the Alliance to protest. At first, everyone thought it was just an ordinary demonstration. But when the Alliance president was assassinated in the street, all the Alliance officials descended into panic. After reporting the news to Caleb, his aide made a sincere suggestion. Should the Alliance issue a clarification now? This was all but Caleb disagreed. Aide, you're missing the point. The truth doesn't matter. This is just an excuse for violence. The real conflict is that for years, AO pairings in the Alliance have been based solely on the Alpha's will. Omegas were tired of being appendages to Alphas, of being protected until they came of age, only to be distributed like commodities to corresponding Alphas based on pheromone compatibility. During that time, they were forbidden from using any drugs that could affect the Alliance's birth rates. Years of resentment had finally boiled over. The aide looked up in disbelief. Are you suggesting we legalize Omega suppressants? That would harm the interests of so many Alphas in the Alliance. Oh no, I don't mean that. I mean, the Enforcement Division and the Council will never pass such a bill. Caleb's eyes turned icy as his fingers rested on the scales of justice, the long-standing symbol of the Alliance's adjudicator's court. That's why we need to ride this wave. Instead of putting a bandage on a gaping wound, it's better to give it a push and let the Alphas at the top back down on their own. The aide immediately went to take stock of supplies according to Caleb's instructions. He soon returned to report. But Omega suppressants have always been a controlled substance in the Alliance. We don't have that many in stock right now. Hearing this, I pushed the door open and walked in. I'll handle it. The Empire has always had a trade in Omega suppressants. There's a recent shipment at the starport that hasn't been sold yet. At that moment, a look of panic finally appeared on the face of the man who had been masterminding everything. Leo, when did I remember? I thought with a cold smile. Lying to me about my debt, coaxing me into agreeing to all sorts of unreasonable demands and doing that to me. Before I left, I mouthed a threat at him. I'll deal with you when I get back. During the Alliance's time of crisis, Caleb stepped out from the shadows to become the acting president. He took full control of the Alliance's affairs, pushed for legislation protecting Omegas, and even allowed Omegas to enter politics. Even after a new president was inaugurated, Caleb retained significant influence in Alliance politics. On the eve of Caleb's inauguration, I boarded a ship back to the Empire with the people the High Pontiff had sent to retrieve me. My aide noticed my reluctance. Your Highness, Why don't you bring Mr. Shaw back to the Empire with you? I cut him off. He won't come to the Empire for me. The aide didn't understand. But your maternal grandfather, even as the president of the Alliance, was willing to. I shook my head and explained it more simply. He might be willing, but I'm not. I covered my belly with the clothes he had left behind. The lingering scent of my child's alpha father was a great comfort. I don't want him to stay in the Empire either. He belongs in the Alliance. Some people in this world are born for politics. I am one of them. So is Caleb. This meant we were never destined to be together forever. Instead, we were fated to meet again at the pinnacle of the galaxy. Aiden was the name of the little alpha born in the Empire. The Alliance sent an unprecedented firework display to celebrate the birth of the beautiful little prince. Using the Alliance's latest technology, the fireworks lit up the sky for 3 days and 3 nights, to the highest standard. I lowered my eyes, trying to squirm away from the hot breath of the alpha holding me. Isn't this a bit much? I don't think my grandfather was this extravagant when he was courting my grandmother. Caleb sat beside me, holding me in his arms. That's because when they were courting your grandparents, they had already voluntarily given up their power. But I'm different. I have power and I can afford it. I want everyone to look up and see this gift. And I want the entire galaxy to see how much I love you. I couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath. Hiss. Caleb chuckled softly. What's wrong? Moved by my wedding gift? Cost a fortune. But as long as you like it, sweetheart, I squirmed out of his arms. No, you're pulling my hair. Before he could react, I slapped the pen I was holding against his chest, turned on my heel, and strode into the ballroom. Later, Caleb started commuting between the Alliance and the Empire every month. Although some in the Alliance were unhappy, Caleb had earned too much political capital for them to say much. This was especially true after Noah was born. The entire Alliance was smitten with the beautiful little Omega. The consensus was that even if Caleb, under the Empire's influence, one day betrayed the Alliance, they had to keep the beautiful little Omega as their beloved mascot. Relations between the Empire and the Alliance reached an unprecedented level of harmony. I stood on the ramparts of the Imperial City as Caleb's ship landed before me. He stepped out, holding a cute little Omega who was chewing on his fingers and staring at me with wide eyes. You have no idea how closely those old geezers watch Noah. I barely managed to sneak him out. Look, he's so good, just like you. I took the child, who leaned against me affectionately. Daddy, how are you going to explain this to the Alliance, just taking the child like this? Explain what? This is our precious son. Speaking of which, Caleb's teeth clenched. Those old bastards. All they do is try to marry Noah off to their tow-headed alpha sons. I chuckled softly, humming a lullaby to the child in my arms until he fell asleep. After blowing out the lamp, Caleb wrapped his arms around my waist, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Honey, it's my rut. I leaned in and kissed his cheek, opening my arms to him. I know. Let me hold you. The galactic night glittered with stars. Just like the bond between Caleb and me, could cross any distance and any time.